Good morning, Dolly. Happy Good Friday. How are you? Welcome to the Rob and Dolly Show.
I'm very glad to have you here today, especially after last night, which is not our topic, but Frankfurt won against Barca. So I'm very happy.
Okay.
But today we have a different topic, which is.
Yeah, less sports. Well, I thought we would talk. Well, let me just say, let the topic present itself as I read this passage today. So I'm going to read from the King James Bible. It is again Good Friday, and I thought this would be topical, but it leads into our subject, our theme today. And I'm reading from Matthew 26, 36 to 46, and this is from the King James Version. Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane, and saith unto the disciples, Sit ye here, while I go and pray yonder. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then saith he unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And he went a little further, and fell on his face, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he cometh unto his disciples, and findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, What, could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again the second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them and went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then cometh he to his disciples, and saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And of course, I would like to say that, the subject today, of course, is betrayal. I think it's very pertinent. And
Yes.
Dolly, in your life, we've all experienced betrayal, but is there something that you can share about any betrayals that were very pertinent to you, or maybe that changed your life? Was there something in your past that shifted your perspective on your relationship with people? Because betrayal always depends upon relationships and trust.
It is. I was grown up in East Germany, so I didn't have much to do with church. So I didn't go to church. I honestly never heard about that story. But we had, of course, very religious people in East Germany. And my parents, of course, went to church when they were children. But what I learned from my daddy was that he said to me, You can do everything you want, but never, please, never betray me and never lie to me. The hard thing was that he was a very punishing dad. So
Unforgiving.
he was very strict, and of course I was afraid. And I hadn't decided when I was a kid, will I be a victim or will I be an oppressor? Because you have heard about that you make up
Yes.
your mind later in life. So of course I lied to him, and I was punished many times because he detected me. And I always felt bad as someone who betrayed. But before that, I always found excuses not to tell the truth to my dad. And I think that is also a topic here in the Bible story. It is that Jesus says to his disciples, "You fell asleep. You
Yes.
didn't do me this one big favor after I told you that I'm at risk. And why didn't you do that tiny thing?"
Mm-hmm.
And the question always is, in the eyes of the betrayed, it is always that it is a tiny thing that is missing. In the eyes of the one who becomes the traitor, it is always that he has excuses.
Exactly. It's very true. And I can apply this to my own life. You speaking of your father. My father, I love him, but it's been a strenuous relationship, and we've discussed this in previous podcasts. But when I was living with my father and brother, there were like little mini betrayals. For instance, when I first moved from British Columbia, I had lived with my mother for 2 years, my mother and stepfather. I moved back to Ontario in 2000, or the end of 1999, essentially January 2000. And these little betrayals were more or less this feeling of being unwelcome, because for my father, I had betrayed him. That was his understanding of my going out west. I had betrayed him. I had left him. So therefore, his perception of the betrayal allowed him to equally do another form of betrayal, namely allowing my brother to be insulting towards me, allowing my brother to do whatever he wanted in the face of justice. My father said, "Well, whatever my brother does is legitimate. It's no problem." So my brother got away with many things, whereas me, I couldn't. And then the ultimate betrayal is that during this time period from 2000 to 2001, my family was going through a very interesting time. This had to do with my mother's side of the family. My father had an interesting relationship in that he was very sympathetic, not so much to my mother, but to my mother's sisters, my mother's cousin. So, in a sense, that my mother betrayed my father, and my father decided to have an alliance with everyone my mother no longer had a decent relationship with. My mother's sisters, most of them, I mean, my Aunt Gloria and I, we get along pretty good, but the other ones I don't care for. They're I would almost say they're horrible people. I don't know if they're listening, but yeah, you're horrible people. Right? I mean, this is my opinion, so you did a podcast and you argue with me. But what happened is that within my mother's family, there was always infighting. And at one point, because my grandfather, my mother's father, had passed away years ago, he had left this education fund for all the grandchildren. All the grandchildren were left individual funds, but for many years, the executor, with the help of, I call her Aunt Katrina, I'll call her Aunt Katrina, conspired with the executor to keep this education fund hidden so the interest would increase. Therefore, when she finally took the money out, it would have basically tripled into
Hmm.
some, it was basically almost 12, 13 years of interest. So my stepfather actually found out, inquired with the executor what was happening. So I started to take money out of this education fund in 2000. Then in 2001, when my brother, myself, and my cousin, so this is Aunt Katrina's son, I'll call him Scotty, we all received our individual inheritances. When we inquired about the education fund, the executor said, "There's nothing there." And it turns out that my Aunt Katrina, had illegally used means of acquiring this money. So, for instance, she had a stepdaughter. This stepdaughter was not legally entitled to this education fund. My Aunt Katrina took basically the receipts, the education receipts. So, in order to access this account, you needed education receipts. So, from the university or college, because my cousin, the step cousin, basically my aunt's stepdaughter, had been to school for 4 years, my aunt took these receipts, applied it to this fund, and took all the money out in one fell swoop. All gone. So
So,
about 15,000 gone in a heartbeat.
so what you say is something like it leaves me. Some people would react with cold shudder. Others would
Mhm.
react with something like, "Well, there are harder things in life."
Yeah.
This world is full of betrayal. So
Yes.
whenever you hear a story, it is very it has a deep impact on everyone
Mhm.
attached. But there is ignorance from others who say, "Oh, I couldn't be bothered."
And
This
and this,
is something, and today we have this special Karfreitag.
yeah.
This is something where it was pronounced that he said, "You will betray me," and they did. So it was even said before. In your case, there was mute silence.
Yes. And it's an interesting aspect. Yes, there is a kind of mute silence, but also an expectation of betrayal in a sense, because Jesus expected when Judas came to him, he said, "Friend, do what you have to do." For me, was my father. I started to look into this legally, this theft, and it turns out that the legal said to me, the lawyer said, "This will waste all your money and time. Let it go." And when the accounting came out, my father finally told me that when my aunt took all the money out, she divided the funds. So the funds that were stolen and gave a little bit to my father. And my father gave me this money saying, "Oh, this is money from me to you for your education." So this
I
was a
see.
betrayal for me
Yeah.
because he went behind my back. He lied about where the money came from. He said it was from him. Then he later told me, "No, it was your aunt who took the money illegally."
Yes.
So
And it is
that's
on
betrayal.
Yeah, and it is on your side to say that is heavy, that is serious. So you make the decision, but I guess the ones involved think that they are imperfect. They recognize their imperfectness, but they don't see the seriousness it evokes in the other one.
No, they don't. My father, for him, it was just an admission, like just basically telling me he got the newspaper, like, "Oh, this happened." And that was after that I was hit with an incredible depression for 2 months. I just felt I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to. I was angry at everyone, and I that's another aspect is that sometimes we're blind to betrayal. It's so in your face to the point you have to look away, and then the anger depression led to the ulcerative colitis. And it was only until many years later in 2012 when I was here in Leipzig, I finally had my phone conversation with my father. He wanted to find out how things were going on my trip, and at that point, finally, I just had to let it out and express this anger about the betrayal. So, I mean, it was an epiphany when it finally
Mm.
came out. I had to let it go.
Yes.
But the people that are closest to us, that's the worst part. I mean, Balzac, the French writer, said our disappointments always tell us how great our hopes were. Betrayal always tells us, and to the extent of betrayal, so how deep the betrayal feels, how horrible and horrific and hurtful it is, it really shows us how deeply we were attached to a person that betrayed us, what that relationship meant or doesn't mean to them.
Yes. I think people who betray, and it is all of us, want to be loved, want to be respected, or they want to avoid shame. It is also a question of motivation to avoid some negative output, and it is always weakness. So when you are the ones who are the victim, you always ask yourself, why didn't that person ask for help? Why didn't that person clearly said, I'm afraid, I think you are weak, I think you will follow your own needs, like in the disciples, I think you will fall asleep.
Yes,
So why can't you stay with me?
it is a
And
sleep. It is a sleep of reason, in a sense, a sleep of humanity. It's almost like apathy.
it is sloth.
Yes,
It
like
is a
almost
sin.
intellectual.
It is
Yes,
it is a sin, yes. So if you say to a person, "Our climate will change for the worst, and we are all gonna die," it is the same like Jesus said to his disciples, and it is sloth. I want to go to work by car. I want to eat. I want to sleep. I want to have sex. These are the needs of a human. So they don't care about betraying climate, betraying the children, the next generation who comes after us. They don't do it out of reasons for sloth, I think.
but to that I argue that there is technology that does exist that we could use alternatively to fossil fuels, to gasoline and coal. So I would say our government, in a sense, is betraying the innovation of technology because let's put it this: we have a society that, let's put it this way, why do we punish the very people that are told to go to work, to go here, to go there? Yes, I know there are alternative means, and I'd rather own a bicycle than a car,
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned. But taxing people for living their lives is not fair. So I just feel like the government. I mean, let's put it this way: if hydrogen is energy, and water contains hydrogen H2O, why don't we have innovation in that direction? Because of
Mhm.
probably government suppression, and the government is too busy dancing around the lobbyists and also, yes, yes, Mr. Oil and Mr. Coal, we'll make you happy. We'll
Mhm.
cut taxes for you.
Yes,
I
and
mean, I know what you're saying because, yes, we have to contribute. And I also feel a big part of that contribution is I think a lot of individuals need to participate in life more, participate in government, in public rhetoric and discussion. And you're right, there is a laziness involved.
yes, I think so. And the only way out is repentance. And in the Bible, I learned that people have repented for all these thousands of years. It's more than 2,000 at the time.
Yeah.
So we will repent. our weakness. Definitely, always.
Yes, but I also think repentance involves a little bit more of like awareness of who we are and what we do every day.
Yes, that's right.
And I think
Mm.
betrayal, as you said, as you stated earlier, the person who does the betrayal, the weakness is that they don't see what they have done. They've accomplished this severance between trust and distrust. They've created that realm of it's uncomfortable because when someone's betraying you, you don't really see it initially, but and then the aftermath is just this ugly feeling. And the worst part for the person who was betrayed, not only do you blame yourself for not seeing it, but of course you blame the other person. So you're drawn between anger and depression. And yes, there is like this innocence, like again, coming back to Jesus with his disciples, they're falling asleep. In a sense, a person who betrays another person has fallen asleep to their own humanity, to their own heart. Or they've fallen asleep to recognizing or being sympathetic with someone like my action could do this to this person. That argument disappears. That feeling of potential future, like for instance, the reason why we stop doing something horrific is we think about the consequences. And the fact that little betrayals happen every day means that a lot of people are probably living in this sort of trivial world where they think everything they do has no meaning, which makes me feel sympathetic because I feel like there's so much meaning in what we do and what we say. I mean, the very act of smiling at another person to me shows care and love.
Yes, and Rob, when I think about betrayal as a consequence of punishment in education, this is what I remember about my dad, and this is what I remember about many relationships. And also, I found a quotation that was said by Jesus: "All who live by the sword shall die by the sword." And I think he said it to someone who cut an ear off from somebody as a punishment. And we say it Auge um Auge, Zahn um Zahn in Germany.
Yeah.
And this is aggression. This is punishment. This is the idea of punishment in education. So,
Yeah.
and you could see it from my perspective, yes. It could be a punishment for humanity, for his disciples, that they will have to suffer and repent and be sad and have
Yes.
tasks to do. It is a certain form of punishment for betrayal.
Yes.
And you
And
can't blame one person for it. They all are responsible. Everybody is responsible.
betrayal, in a sense, you're giving up responsibility. I find it very fascinating that in Dante's Inferno, when you come to the ninth circle, it becomes cold, and that is the realm of the betrayers. And you have four kinds of betrayers. You have the betrayal towards guests, the betrayal towards your kindred, your kin, betrayal towards your country, and of course, betrayal towards the Lord. So when you find Satan at the very pit of hell, he's in a frozen lake and he's chewing. He has three mouths. In one mouth there's Judas Iscariot, next is Brutus, and the other one's Cassius, and he's chewing on these betrayers for eternity. So I find that remarkable because it does showcase that there is a coldness in betrayal because it's almost like, again, you turn off your heart.
Yes, it is the following steps. It is like guilt. When you betray, you feel guilty. Yes. So, but this comes after detection, the guilt. It is not while doing the act of betrayal. Then shame. Shame also comes later. It is not when you betray in that moment. Humiliation. You always feel humiliated. It is, if you betray or not, humiliation is always there. Mistrust is always great at the beginning. If you have an affair, and I know how it is because I say yes, I had an affair in my life. So it is already mistrust at the beginning of the affair because you mistrust us, and the other person knows that. So
Yes.
you will be repaid later. You know that there's mistrust from the beginning. And the core needs are suppressed in a relationship always. It is like love, respect, and safety. This is what we all want, but you can't find it in an affair. I'm sure
Hmm.
about that because you neglect your own love left behind.
Yes. And that comes back to betrayal. Most things that people, for instance, a person betrays for things of this world. They don't betray, for instance, because of doing something wonderful, love and things like that. Most betrayals, like, well, let me just say this, most deeply hurting betrayals are a result of trying to gain something, but more from an egotistical standpoint. I mean, someone could say, "Oh, you betrayed your country by telling the truth." I mean, that's basically political rhetoric. For instance, a communist could say, "Oh, someone like Solzhenitsyn, he betrayed the Russians, he betrayed the Soviet Union by publishing the Gulag Archipelago."
Hmm.
But Solzhenitsyn can argue back and says, "Well, you betrayed the Russian people by
Yeah,
sending us to purges,
yeah. You can't argue with ethics. It's impossible
or the
because
ethics of the state."
yeah, it's impossible. But what you can ask yourself out there, dear listener, is how do you gain power in your life? Isn't there right betrayal right from the beginning when you only want to seek power? It is you get a job offer, you get very excellent connections. I think you have to betray yourself in order to
Yes.
gain power right from the beginning. So it is false promises, it is false loyalty. You have to make decisions. Do I go and work late every day of the week, or do I care for my family? Who do I betray when I want to gain power, and why? And it is not, this is betrayal within our society.
I agree. And there's the ideology, for instance, is the state has this power and that people want to have participate in that power. So therefore they will work late. They will betray a fellow person. I've been reading The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel. And he talks about that. He talks about the idea that an individual in society, he wants to conform because he feels that if he doesn't conform, he betrays everyday people. But in the midst of conforming, he might betray his own conscience. He might betray someone. For instance, if you have, he talks about in communist times how he worked for a brewery. He couldn't find work as a writer, but he was an outsider because of his plays. So he started working for a brewery, and this individual he was working with wanted to help improve the beer. But of course, that was against everything. Mediocrity in a communist society is the goal. It's almost like the inversion of like the hierarchy of needs, where the goal is to be, in fear, conform, and we talked about in our previous podcast about East Germany,
Hmm.
to live in this sort of state of constant, we're looking like we're bowing to the state. The state is our ideology, and I think ideology is a form of self-betrayal the more you believe in it. And this comes into current times, I feel, because I feel like a lot of people have kind of fallen into this ideology of fear. For instance, just speaking about, here in Leipzig, like in Saxony, the mask mandates lifted to some degree, but let's put it this way. No, you go to a hospital, you go to a care center, they want you to wear a mask. Okay,
Yeah.
it's part of the theater, whatever you would call it, the safety. But I went into Konsum here. Konsum was once the Leipzig East German grocery store. It's one of my favorite places to go. And half the people were masked, half were not. That's their decision, fine. But there's no more stickers on the floor. So I was there in a spontaneous moment. It's before the Easter holidays. Just wanted to go in for a quick shop, get my essentials, and I put everything down. I hadn't brought a bag with me, and I just put everything down because I didn't want to have to keep holding it. And the woman in front of me was wearing a mask, and she was looking back at me as if, "Oh, you're coming into my space, therefore you're an illness and could affect me." And she had this whole ideology of fear, and I just ignored her. So when she paid and I was getting ready to start bagging my stuff, she just kept looking at me as if I was this evil person because I didn't wear a mask anymore and I didn't show I cared.
But you see how you react? It is you expect from others to be friendly and lovely. If
Hmm.
they differ from that line, you show a certain behavior which is aggressive in its own. So this is the consequence of consequences. So if you break that up and say, "I love that person," I know it's hard. But if you nodded and say, "I understand," yes, just with non-verbal behavior, I understand what you mean. But yes, look, I'm very very nice nice guy. So you wouldn't have to be like that. But I
But I,
see you have a lot of feelings into it because
yes,
of your experience, and these are yours. You were punished for 2.5 years.
yes, because other people's fear took precedent over the individual. Like I believe, along with John Stuart Mill, that the individual should dictate how they coordinate their lives around others. So if you want to live in fear, you wear a mask. If you want to take a vaccine, that's your choice. But the whole idea is that your vaccine won't work unless I take it. It's almost the same idea of like, oh, I have a headache, then you should take, the Tylenol with me. You should take the painkiller with me. I mean, that's just bonkers as far as I'm concerned. That kind of ideology, that it's all about, you're trying to encourage people to do things just because you did it. I really love the Babylon Bee, and in one episode they did a kind of fun therapy video of all these people that had to let go of the mask. One guy basically saying, "I needed the mask so I could help control other people," and
Yeah,
that's the
here
horrible
we go.
thing.
Here we go. And I think what is in the beginning, we said about punishment or the need to belong.
Hmm.
So many people had to make a decision. Do they want to go to their job, go on holiday, going out, going shopping, go to the restaurant, or not?
I made this.
So,
I
so
made the
you made
decision.
your decision. I made mine. So we are different in this case. And what comes of that is, I guess, self betrayal. Because in the end, now I personally feel I have been shot with that
Hmm.
ingredient, and
Yeah,
I feel somehow betrayed
and
because the whatever it is, it's spread and it is not stoppable. And this is a bad feeling. It doesn't make me very happy, and it doesn't make me happy when I think about people who make war now
yes,
because they have a need to belong. They have to take a position either side. So I'm talking now about politics.
yes.
So it is always the need to belong, and is too rarely regret and remorse and sticking to your own real needs.
Yes. And it comes back to the idea, like in English, the proverb or the saying, rock the boat. Because rocking the boat, it already, you assume that there's a boat that's going down a river. And when you rock it, you're betraying the people in the boat. So if you're standing out, you're saying something that's contrary to the narrative, contrary to public opinion. But if it's contrary to your own heart, so how deep is the betrayal? So if I decide not to wear a mask at a certain place, I've somehow betrayed this narrative. But if I betray my own heart, then that's a different matter. So we have almost different layers of betrayal, different worlds. So coming back to how you feel, you've taken this medical procedure. You were told in good faith that this will help. And yet it seems like no matter what, we're both in the same boat.
Yeah,
Me not
we are.
taking it, you take not taking it. We've had different experiences. I was thinking today about how in the last year I feel like I've been estranged from the world.
Mhm.
That's my reaction. I feel like the world has betrayed sense and rationality. It's just, for instance, the mind of fear, the mind that is totally enamored with fear cannot think the same way as a mind that's clear thinking, has time for debate. And that's the worst part. I feel like our governments have in many ways betrayed debate, because debate is part of a free society. And I feel like we've been sort of imposed upon with this fear. We've never been calm. There's never been a moment of like, oh, don't worry, things are going to be okay. It's always been this constant message of fear. And to me, that's the government betraying the public trust. The government's duty is to make sure their citizens are safe, that everything is well taken care of. All these past 2 years, all we've got is the message of like, we're unsafe, we can't handle things, this has to be done, you have to do this, if you don't do this, you're going to hurt grandma. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, she will die. Yes.
And that's
Yes.
this threat of fear has paralyzed people.
Yeah, and it has spurred hatred among people,
Yes.
and we no longer feel safe. We try to avoid pain. It is like we repeat fear in every new day. So it is, we want the opposite. And maybe experts from the Bible would say, all you all need the catastrophe to repent
To
and you
awaken.
to awaken, to learn again, to start anew, to get a second chance. You can call it what you want. So I have the impression that at the moment, people who are in power don't want to leave it.
Hmm.
They are afraid. They are motivated by fear.
Yes.
And there are, of course, people who know their business, and but they don't have the power. So it is always manipulation going on, and this makes me very sad.
Hmm. But I also feel like good things are happening in the background where individuals are taking their own stance, and the microcosm, the drop in the bucket, is still just as important as the mighty ocean.
Yes, but I mean, if you betrayal, I mean, we were betrayed in East Germany by our government because I didn't know that they had such a good life. Yes, I went to Berlin this weekend and saw how they lived in Wandlitz and before that in Majakowski-Ring. They had villages they had taken from people who belonged there after the war. And we didn't know about that, so we were betrayed. But when the wall came down, we betrayed our principles. It is
How?
all we well, I can say I was 18 years, but I always believed in Gorbachev's perestroika, a reformed socialism. This is what I believed. I believed if you let truth into the system, it is good. Yes,
I agree.
you can do it better. I wasn't a fan of capitalism, but I learned I was manipulated, of course, yes. So, but I felt betrayed by what was signed by politicians and what happened in East Germany after that reunification day, because everybody lost his job.
Yes.
Factories were closed and houses were sold for a penny, and they were erected, refurbished by people who had the money. There was no help to so that we could do it from our own power because we were powerful, but we were betrayed. So after wakening up after certain years, we said, if we had known that, what would happen? It feels like a betrayal.
Yes, and that's the hardest part, and it still continues. For instance, Downing Street, Boris parties while they mass children in school. Same thing. Kamala Harris has a photo op with children in a preschool, or I can't remember what it was, a kindergarten, but the kids are wearing masks, but she's not. And they've known now for 2 years that children who've had to wear masks for the last 2 years, their cognitive abilities, their communication skills, it's been a major decline. And to me, that's a betrayal of the next generation. They always say, "Oh, children are our future." Well, the politicians have ruined the children's future, as far as I'm concerned. Or if they've stunted it, they've arrested the development. Just like the politicians arrested the development of East Germans following, the Wende, the coming down of the wall.
Hmm. Hmm.
So basically, the theme here is that politicians are betrayers.
Well, mighty people cannot be trusted. This is
No,
what
because
I
they
would
love
like to
power.
say.
They love power.
They love power and they like and love to be admired.
Hmm.
So they deal with that admiration, they control it, they plan it.
And that's why things like truth, comedy, like for instance, things like the threat of comedy is so powerful in revealing corruption. Salamanders, they don't like the light. So, when you reveal, when you open, when you bring up, let's say when you lift a stone, what do the creatures underneath? They want to scour into the earth. That's politicians. They just want to scour into the earth. And they keep repeating lies. And the people that want to repeat those lies, they love the ideology. They're so enraptured with it because it gives them a purpose. Just like the person that wears the mask suddenly has this authority, just like the politician, to tell someone who maybe the mask is slipping, oh, raise your mask. You have these everyday mask-tards is what I call them. And they love it. They love the power. So a sub-average person with little to no intellect suddenly can be like, I guess, I don't know what you would call it.
The banality of the evil,
Yeah,
Hannah
that's it.
Arendt called it. Hmm.
Yeah, the banality of everyday evil. So
Hmm.
that woman who was gazing at me at the checkout line at Consum,
Hmm.
she was missing that power, and she was looking at me, not being able to say something. That was her cross to bear. Let's say that way. Her
But
ideological cross to bear. She couldn't yell at me.
yes, but it looks like we are at wartime. Oh, yeah, we are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the next stage. Well, okay, we're gonna close the door on COVID. Hey, let's open the door on war. Come on in. You got fear. You brought fear with you. Come on in. We need more fear. Great.
Mhm.
Anxiety. Food shortages. Yay! What better way to control the people? We need this right now. Yippee skippy. That's what's happening right now. It's just like, oh yeah, forget about the science and forget about this stuff. Let's
Mhm.
shoot some people and let's blame these people and let's let people on Facebook say, oh, I'm so great and I'm so virtuous because I put a Ukrainian flag. When it's so much more complex than that. Come on.
It
I'm
is.
Yeah. I mean, putting a flag up is basically your way of putting a mask on your face. It just shows that you're going along, you're not thinking about it, you're not questioning it,
You
you're
want
not
to
open.
belong.
Yeah, you want to belong and you don't want to
Mhm.
have a debate. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Life is complicated.
And you don't have a connection to your own self.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. So we want you to have a connection and to keep that connection to your own self. Yeah.
And of course, and I also like to stipulate that betrayal of self is part and parcel, because if like attracts like. Let me say this: during the time when my father had done the betrayal of me, I was in a kind of place of self betrayal. So I think we also have to reflect on the fact that what we allow to happen to ourselves, this happens. So as much as the other person is responsible for betrayal, we're responsible for allowing that betrayal to happen and not reacting or not trying to engage with that betrayal. Because I think most people have a hard time with betrayal is that in the aftermath, they linger in silence because they're confused. They're confused by the fact that they let it happen and that it happened. And I think that's a normal reaction. I think it's like, it's different than getting in a fist fight. Someone punches, you punches back. But a betrayal, when it happens, most people go within.
Yes, but only to find safety again, because they are mixed up by their own shame, their own worthlessness inside. They feel that. And they want to get back to the haven of safety. So it is not for long that they will be in that position.
Mhm. But you study psychology, and as we're wrapping up here, let's end on a hopeful note, I think. How can we recover? So if the wound is there, I mean, the natural instinct, like let's put it this way, a child hurts themselves, the natural instinct is to get a band-aid or a plaster and put it on the wound. How do we survive emotional wounds? Is forgiveness, we've talked about forgiveness in a previous podcast. How do we go beyond betrayal? Do we cut that person out who betrayed us? Do we engage in dialogue? What do we do, especially if that other person doesn't want to recognize the betrayal? What do we do?
I think what we do is I would like to see myself as a victim or an oppressor in every instance, and decide in which position I'm at the moment, because I believe that we are all in these two positions once in a while. And if we detect that mode, it is a mode. We detect it and we say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm about to become an oppressor by being painful and being mighty, or I'm about to endure suffering because I want to avoid further pain." So then we are in the victim mode. If we detect that, it is the first step.
So getting away from the misinterpretation of roles, that's how I would perceive it. I think victim oppressor, I think we need to go beyond this. Almost we need to transcend those walls and engage in dialogue, because when I see my father, what happened to him as a child, I mean, he came to Canada at a young age, and his mother told him every day in the new world in Canada, I don't know if I'm going to be home when you come back. That was a betrayal of motherhood. So he was never enabled to engage in discussion with her about why she said that, because for her, she felt like her husband betrayed her. She was dragged to a foreign land against her will. So to me, the betrayals also has a connection. There's like a chain link, and it just links and links and links back into the past.
Yes, but that's very troubling because you will see deficiencies in the ones you love. And that's very, very painful. If you see somebody you admire weak, if you see somebody you suffered from all those years as a weakling, um, I think the other way is nicer. If you embrace him and start to love him and your own deficiencies.
And is that, did you apply that to your father? Do you, when
Yes,
you're,
I do this exactly. Yes.
because the father, in a sense, becomes like a child later in life, doesn't he?
Yes. Yeah. And no reproaches.
No reproaches.
No.
So would you say that maybe dialogue is the best way and compassion to move beyond betrayal?
Yeah, only if that person is able to do that. My dad is not.
Hmm. So does that hopeful note? Can we leave on that?
I think so, yes. I'm looking forward to the piece of music you're going to play.
I
And
haven't
see,
decided yet. We'll
yeah,
we'll I'll surprise us.
I,
I'll
I
surprise us all.
I'm looking forward to that. So
I won't betray you.
thank you very much. Bye bye,
This is
Rob. That
this has
was
been. I
nice.
just want to say thank you, and it's been a fascinating dialogue and very fascinating. So I wish everyone a happy Good Friday
Yeah.
and all peace and love, and hopefully no war, no more illness, more
Hmm.
wine, more good times.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.